Hey everybody, I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to As Above, So Below, a rune and tarot divination for Thursday, the 16th day of February, 2023. Well, I hope everyone's doing well. Excuse the respiratory stuff here. I was outside for a little bit last night, and somebody's burning a pellet stove, and it's like, oh Lord, that stuff is so damaging, I swear. Every time I go out, it's like I have the same kind of reaction I do to breathing in when we have people that have burning barrels around here. We have one, but we don't use it anymore. Haven't in decades. But a lot of time people burn their paper trash and stuff. Well, they also burn plastic, and that puts toxins in the air really bad. And I kind of have the same reaction to pellet stoves that I do to that, and it makes me really sick. So my husband too, he came back in, he went up to the mailbox and back, and that's 800 feet up and back, and 800 feet back. And so he was out there for longer than I was, and he wasn't doing well last night. He was pretty sick from it all. So anyhow, that's what's going on here. We're recovering from that today. But it means, when it's out there burning, you can't go out. I mean, I swear, without a respirator on, at least in my case. So anyway, fun times, isn't it? Well, we have Perthro today as the Elder Futhark rune to start things out with. Perthro is an interesting, it has directionality to it. Some runes do, but this one in particular does. This is open to birth. This is open to death. This is a cauldron. This is also considered, I think, the womb. So giving birth, actually. Let me get this out of this little hole I'm in here. Anyhow, Perthro is about fate and understanding fate. It's thought to be the cup from which the runes are cast, and hence open to the future. This is to the past, and so it's giving an idea of what the future is about, or the kinds of things you ought to be thinking about. But realistically, it's about fate or chance and understanding cause and effect. It can also mean, again, depending on how it's thrown down and whether or not you use directionality if you're working with runes. I don't. I just think about the wholeness of the rune itself. So I might talk about, both sides of this, the negative side, the positive side, that kind of thing. And it's kind of the same way I feel about tarot. I think you can look at the tarot cards. Either you can either do reversals, include reversals in your readings, or you don't have to. You can, but the idea, if you don't, it seems to me you have to talk about both sides of the issue with each card, right? So if something has a positive effect, it also reverse might have a less positive effect, and so you really ought to be able to include that in your readings. And so that's kind of how I see that. But in any event, with Perthro, you're looking at cause and effect, you're looking at fate, you're looking at who determines that. Are you going to give that away to others? But internally, energetically, are you going to give that away to ego, or are you going to take the reins as a soul and decide things from that perspective, from a higher perspective, instead of one that is purely reactionary? So you could look at it kind of both ways, internally and externally. But again, who's going to guide that? Who's going to have that kind of control today? Where is that going to come from? And I just say, let's see, I don't need that. That's not one of my elemental runes. That's a bind rune. It's this one here. Looks like that. I have it on the area here, the work area here, for to sort of open up clarity in whatever it is I'm doing. So it sort of provides the energy for clarity. Let's see. Oh, okay. Well, no, yes. Okay, so this is Tristitia. Tristitia and Laetitia, its complement. Laetitia is about joy. And so then conversely, Tristisha would be about sorrow. But it's worse than that. It's really, I mean, to me, these two particular runes, if I can find the other one, it's really about grief and condemnation. Oh, there it is. Whereas Laetitia would be this way. This is joy, good fortune, and all of that. But Tristisha, it's complement. And again, it's like looking at a tarot card and then its reversal, right? I think that which sort of reinforces what I'm saying here, what I was saying earlier. Anyway, you have Tristisha here, which is not just about sadness and grief. It's about condemnation. It's a really egoic type of experience. And again, coupled with Perthro today, maybe that's what this is really about. It's about who is going to control your fate. Are you going to let the reactive ego do that, or are you going to, go to higher ground basically and try to let things settle out and see what's really going on, and avoiding judgment and avoiding some kind of reaction that will, perhaps set you on a path that you can't really walk back. And so, with the idea of, it's what lens do you see things through? Do you jump to the wrong conclusions? Do you accuse people of things that they're just standing there going, what? I don't know what you're talking about. But see, by the time they've accused you, it's out there, and there's really nothing that the person can do to take that back. They've jumped to the wrong conclusion. They've decided you're the devil or the enemy or whatever. You're responsible for their issues when it's really them that's responsible for their issues. It's that kind of a weird condemnation attitude with Tristisha, and so it's so far down in the muck of the ego that you can't really you see everything through that lens. And so how does that, if that's the case, then what kind of decisions do you make then at that point with the Perthro energy to pull yourself out of that, to let go of the ego's hold, to let go of the condemnation and the judgment of it all, thinking other people are the enemy when they're not, when you're the one making the decisions, right, that are getting you to that are putting you in the place you're putting in. But see, you're put in, but you don't want to accept responsibility for that, and so it's just easier to blame other people. It's kind of like that. So that seems to be the overall focus of today's reading then, is how far down the rabbit hole do you go, and when are you able to look at objectively at something and say, well, if I'm getting pushback from people, maybe I need to rethink. Maybe it's not them, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the one who's created a scenario that other people feel the need to push back on. We never think about it that way. It's like, it's always their fault, but it's not. It's most of the time, it's about something you're doing or something you've done or something you've said that has caused a reaction in people that you don't like. Well, kind of too bad. If you have to be able to examine your own choices, your own decisions, what you do, the things you say, and understand how it might not be something that other people are really going to be happy with, and nor should they be. So it's kind of like that, I think, when you're looking at the two of those runes together. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to cut the deck and lay out 3 cards. Well, we have one from everything today. We have one from the major arcana, one from the minor and swords. Well, 2 from swords, but one of them is from the court. So let's see. We can do this from 2 different perspectives. We can either put the major card at the end, and Uh, or we can just read it as it is, maybe. Let's go ahead and start it though as it is, and then we might put this one at the end. This is Judgment. Here we have Angel Gabriel blowing his horn, bringing everybody else into, everyone's rising up out of their coffins in supplication to the angel. You see the cross pennant here, which I interpret as this is the axis of incarnation. I look at. It's not a medical cross. I don't view it as that at all. I view as this is bringing everybody into balance, which is here, in terms of their earthly form. This would be the as above, so below axis. This would be the soul's focus into form, that vortex. Here is they would be the feminine and masculine, or receptive and projective energies of in other words, the horizontal axis of actual physical reality. Ideally, we should be right here, but we're not. We're down here. And again, where we're not understanding that we're souls, we're not connecting into that awareness, into that energy, and instead, we're just, our experiences are a lot of them are reactions versus creations. And we talk a lot about that. I mean, that's really the basis of the readings I do, is trying to understand the relationship between the two, and when you're out of balance, what does that look like? But here you have an awakening. A lot of the non-traditional cards will call this rebirth or eon or what have you. They don't really like the word, and neither do I, judgment, because I don't think that it's really about judgment. It's really about awakening to who you really are, and awakening to truth versus again living the illusion of form, which all too often happens. If we are creators in our own right, the soul decides what it wants to do, what it wants to focus on in this particular incarnation, and likely, the oversoul is in a lot of other places all at the same time, but this little piece wants to focus on this one little, this generalized idea during their lifetime, and you get everybody doing that, right? All the little soul pieces that do that, and pretty soon you've got all of them are overlapping, and it gives everybody the richness and the experiences and of what life and form can give you in terms of learning. But if you're projecting your own life here, your own sense of consciousness here, if that's your projection, then the kinds of things you experience, if you're constantly judging them as good or bad instead of just something to experience, you really can get into the nasty side of things, and the nasty energy of things, and the ego of things, where you get stuck. And that becomes your truth, instead of being able to step back and say, well, what's the overall truth here? What's the overall lesson to learn? And do I need to get really down in the muck of it all, or can I stand back and look at this and be the observer in my own life? And that's really what I think the Angel Gabriel here in the Judgment card is asking people to do, is to rise up and awaken to who they are, and to understand the bigger picture of things. It's the 20th card of the Major Arcana, so it's a 2 numerology. There's reciprocity, there's healing, there's balance. So it's definitely a card of that. But at the same time, understanding who you are, and it's right here. To me, the truth of it all is contained in this little pennant that he's got there. Is to awaken to the balance of who you really are, and to allow that truth to inform your life, instead of all this myriad of reaction that we all get caught up in. That becomes the truth. And then it's again, it's who's controlling your fate. Is it the ego's response, or is it some higher awareness that can maybe give you a little more information about what's really going on? Sometimes people behave in ways that are because they're broken inside. So why wouldn't we show that person compassion? Well, because they're not being very nice, and so you don't want to show them anything, but except the door, right? Don't let it hit you, and all that other stuff, right? Uh, and so it's like in those moments to understand the difficulty that we all have, coming to terms with what we're doing here, right? It's very difficult to have that compassion for someone else, especially if they're causing you difficulty. And so it's in those moments, where you have to rise above it, and it's so hard to do, right? But with the card of judgment, the angel Gabriel is saying, well, look, wake up. I don't know, I realize that we've talked about this. I've mentioned this, my attitude toward this whole woke business. It's like, no. Don't go there. That's dumb. It's just dumb. That's what we're here to do, is to awaken to who we are and what we're doing here, and to understand that we're all part of the same collective consciousness. And we can either accept that and deal with it in a better way, or we can continue to, do what we're doing, and I don't know, it doesn't work. But what are we awakening from? Here we have the Five of Swords. Swords is generally, it's the air element, but it's generally, it can be about conflict, especially on the odd numbers. If this was an even number, maybe not so much. But you look like at the Three of Swords. Three is an odd number as well, and if you remember your basic math from grade school, it's an odd number. Anyway, the idea there is you see three swords piercing a heart. So that's that's betrayal, right? And so the odd numbered ones in swords are a little more difficult than the ones are basically describing some difficulty, whereas the even ones maybe not so much. With the Two of Swords, you've got they're trying to make a decision. You're trying to do it in a balanced, dispassionate way. So, that's not necessarily conflict, right? Maybe it has to do with some conflict, but it's not in and of itself. But here you've had some conflict, and this guy seems really happy about it, and he's picking up the swords, and this one's concerned about this one who's holding his head. He's bereft, He's right there next to the water's edge, which isn't completely smooth. You see the sketchy brown clouds in the sky that seem to be dissipating, because clearly whatever was happening is now over. Five is about change. It's about freedom versus restriction, innovation, variety. Did I say protection? I don't know. Maybe I did. It's the pentagram, so it's all elements together plus spirit. Here you see the line of demarcation. It's one of those dual lines right there. You see the line of demarcation, sort of, that was then, this is now. So the waters are the emotion. In other words, the water element is about your emotions and change and momentum and all of that. But then what you see is it's starting to simmer down a little bit as the clouds start to dissipate. The water is starting to get calmer, but it's not there yet. But it sort of represents the emotions of what has been happening here in this scene, to get us where we are at this point in it, where he's picking up the swords. He's the winner. He's really pretty happy about it, and that never feels good to me. So it's like, to the victor goes the spoils. Well, at what cost, right? At what cost to the relationship here between the three men? So clearly something's changed, and it's not really being handled very well. So maybe the awakening has to do with maybe an argument you've had with somebody, and maybe you won, maybe you lost, depending on who you are in this card, it's going to resonate maybe differently for you, but the argument's over, and you have to now make a decision about what you're going to do about it, which brings us to the Page of Swords. This is an interesting card. Pages are about new experiences. They're also considered students and news bearers. But the Page of Swords is a risk taker. So in spite of what's going on in the past, and you could say he's looking at what's going on here, but just in spite of what's going on here, he's going to lean forward into the future anyway. The clouds are distinctly different. They're the billowy clouds. There's birds up in the sky. There's movement, because you can see the trees over here look like they're blowing. And the ground seems a little bit, there's a sense of movement on the ground, don't you think? And you see mountains over here in the distance. So there could be some challenges along the way. But basically, he's vigilant, he's intelligent, he's diplomatic. The swords, the air, it reflects the air element. You're talking about communication and interaction, legal issues, bringing things to balance, cutting through deception. The Queen of Swords is like that. I love the Queen of Swords in any of the decks, particularly the Thoth deck, but I've talked about that before. She's reclined on a crystal throne. She's got a sword in one hand and a severed head in the other because the Queen of Swords doesn't take any prisoners, right? Yeah. She doesn't suffer fools gladly. She doesn't, just no nonsense. It's like, no. Don't bring me truth, or, it's going to be, something's going to happen here. I'm not going to like it. You're not going to like my reaction. So it's really about living in truth and taking a risk and being vigilant. He can also be a little bit petty if he's ill-dignified. So again, it may be with an eye toward the past. He's moving into the future. Maybe he's letting go of any pettiness that happened here. And he's just letting this go. Maybe that's the change that's taken place. He's just letting it go, and he's moving on, and he's just done. There was enough change here that a new direction needs to happen, maybe. So either it doesn't actually answer the question, though, of if there was an argument between you and a friend, or you and a family member, or someone whoever, whatever it is. It doesn't really talk about the solution. It doesn't talk about whether or not you've come back together. This could be, to me, this seems like a serious situation that does create a lot of change. And it may be that whatever has gone on, maybe it's just something you have to walk away from for a while. Maybe forever, but maybe just for a while, just to get a different perspective. That's the nice part about the Page of Swords, being the student. Pages being the student, you have this idea of learning, if you look at it in terms of the age difference in the court, you've got the page that begins the court, then the knight, which is a little bit older, already done his training, already gone to school, whatever you want to call it. And now he's pursuing, he's off on a quest in protection of whatever, right? Depending on the suit. And then you've got the queen and the king that are the older people in the bunch. And so you can look at it as an age progressive kind of thing. And so the page is the youth. Page is the one with undeveloped potential. He could do anything. And so whatever solution he's decided from here, he's ready to move forward while at the same time acknowledging what happened in the past. This is kind of an interesting, he's kind of looking back over his shoulder. It's like, okay, this is what I'm leaving behind. So whatever the conflict had to do with here, and again, we need to awaken to the fact of who's going to control our fate. Are we going to be stuck here in the misery of this, or are we going to take what we've learned and move on? It doesn't necessarily define what happens in terms of the relationship that's being impacted here. We don't know if the damage is permanent. We don't know. We just know that one guy's really upset, another guy's concerned, and the other guy's happy as all get out, right? And so, what do you do in a situation like that? Maybe these two are having to reevaluate how they feel about this guy, and that's the thing. You can have friendships that maybe they're just there for a time, they're just a function of the time you're in. And then maybe they're not meant to last. Maybe they're, you can appreciate whatever you were able to experience with that person, but now it's just time to let it go and move on. You just sort of fall apart. It's one day you just don't hang out again. And it's not that you don't like the person. It's just maybe you just are going in different directions, and this was just some kind of catalytic event here that between the people and even if it's just between this guy, and this guy's just in the middle of it all, right? Something has happened though that has made you rethink things. Again, that's swords. That's the air element. Made you rethink things, and now you're, with an eye toward what happened. You're going to move on, and move on to a new direction or a new path, and maybe it will ultimately involve, this guy, or it won't. It could just be one of those natural breaks in associations that just happen. It doesn't really mean anything other than, you just kind of go in different directions and your life takes you there. Well, this experience, it seems, has taken the Page of Swords in a new direction. And that's okay. He's the one determining his fate. He's the one that has decided to take a look at this and say, well, I'm not going to be involved in the conflict anymore. I'm just going to go do my thing. And it's not, maybe it's just as simple as all that. But on the other hand, maybe the decision to do that, took a lot of thought. And so we don't want to diminish that if that's in fact what's happened here. Again, judgments about awakening and about understanding the cyclical nature of your existence here, of what goes around comes around. These people are ready now to reincarnate either back here or somewhere else, in some other type of existence, type of experience. I mean, it's all experiential if you think about it. That's all this tangible form is. It's all experiential stuff. And so, you can stay in the grief of it all with Tristitia, and this guy is clearly in grief over what has happened here. He lost. He was, he was hurt. He was harmed. And this other guy is just, thinks that he's won it all. But what has he really won? He might have won the argument, but how did he do that? And it feels to me that it's something that was done in a way that wasn't good, where somebody goes and plans and decides, this is what I'm going to do to that person. This is how I'm going to gain the advantage over that person. I'm going to get what I want, and to heck with what he wants or what she wants. Even to the point of, it doesn't matter what's legal or right or moral or anything else. I'm going to have what I want. And that's what this card always feels like to me. Like this guy's done something in a way that was underhanded and won in a way that wasn't fair. So in terms of like a legal judgment, maybe in a court he lied and the judge believed him, and you're standing there going, but none of that happened. I'm not guilty of that, and what do? It's just where the how the cards fall, basically, and how effective that other person was at telling a story to support his or her point of view that's not even remotely accurate. It's not even remotely truthful, but they're so good at lying that they can convince people of it, right? And so you really feel like you're the only thing you can do is get as far away from that experience as you can, and not ever get back into one again with that individual. And I know my husband and I have both experienced that in our lives, where it's like you stand there and you're looking at this person like you're lying through your teeth, and now I know who you are, but see, they don't want you to know who they are. So they keep trying to, use the friend card and all of the play the friend card. It's like, oh, but we're friends. Like, no, we're not. No, we're not. Friendship in that regard for people like that is very transactional. And for me, it's very uncomfortable, because I don't think that friendship should be based on any of that. I don't think it's about what you can do for one another. It's just about who you are together, and how much time you can enjoy spending with one another. It's not a, it's kind of a heartfelt experience, not a transactional experience. And it just reminds me, when I see these two cards, these two swords cards together, it's like, wow, they've had this conflict, and now this guy's just like looking back going, yeah, look, I'm glad I'm leaving. I'm going to go in this direction now, and I don't want anything to do with that person anymore. I wish them well, I wish them happiness and all of that, but I can't be part of it. I don't want to be part of it. And so that's kind of what this feels like to me. And again, when you do that, You're controlling your own fate. You're not allowing, the guy who's picking up the swords to do that for you and to determine what it is, how you're supposed to behave and how you're supposed to feel and what you're now supposed to do. And it's like, no, I'm gonna make my own decision. I'm gonna see this for how I see it, and I'm gonna move this way. I'm going this way now. I'm done. And so that may be what the judgment is about, the awakening is about today, and taking matters into your own hands, and with respect to your own life and your own decisions, and dropping resistance to the conflict and just walking away from it and not allowing it to impact your life anymore. And if it means walking away from someone that wants to do things like that, then maybe that's the best thing. But again, you can't stay in the misery of it. You can't stay in the grief and condemnation of it, because we get into that little time loop as well, don't we? Where we can't really let go of something and we keep thinking about it and worrying ourselves to death about it. When we could just as easily set it aside and say, okay, I'm going to go focus my attention on this other stuff now. And every time it comes up and you start thinking about it, you force yourself to turn away and go in a different direction to get rid of those feelings, because they're not going to change anything. The situation is what it is. And the person you're dealing with is who they are. And there's not a lot of, and then sometimes, years later, they try to make amends. It's like, well, thank you, but I'm so far distanced from this. I don't know you anymore. And my life it doesn't work with you in it. So thank you, but no thank you, it's you're controlling what nonsense basically you let into your life, and you're deciding what you're willing to risk and what you're not willing to risk. And those are your decisions, and nobody else can judge them. You decide what makes you feel happy and whole and connected to people and connected to life and all of that, and what doesn't. And there's nothing wrong with reevaluation and doing a little house cleaning there and saying, well, this is not working for me, yet I'm still there. So why am I still there? Well, it means you're in the tristitia of it all, and you're allowing that. It's almost like it's the, well, maybe next time it'll be different, mindset that people get into. It's like, well, if I just say the right thing, if I just do the right thing, it'll be different next time, and this person won't be hurtful to me. Well, yeah, they're going to be hurtful to you because they're hurtful people. Sometimes that's just the nature of it. Obviously, if your friend's going through something and they're acting out and they're taking it out on you, it's because you're safe. You're their friend. And they drop resistance and it all comes dumping out. And it doesn't feel very good. But, so unless it's something like that where that prior to whatever this disruption in their life, they weren't this way, then that's a different story. But if they've always been this way, then they're going to change. And so instead of being stuck in the ego of it, of thinking, well, if I just do something differently, I'll be safe. You aren't going to be. It's deciding again what is best for you and what's going to keep you in a harmonious and loving and peaceful state of mind. Is it, or are you, if you're always having to deal with conflict that's maybe unexpected or you don't see it coming, but there it is, you feel clotheslined by it, it's not worth the hassle that it causes you. And if there's no resolution, then what choice do you really have but to maybe set that aside and move in a different direction? And so I think that's probably what this is all about, especially in terms of Perthro and the idea of fate. And here's the other aspect of that I didn't mention of Perthro is synchronicity. Sometimes things happen in your life everything happens for a reason, but sometimes they happen in a way that puts you in that position where you have to make a decision now. How much more of this are you going to take? How much more of this are you going to listen to? How much more grief do you have to experience before you finally wake up and say, you know what? I'm worth more than this. I can go and have experiences in my life that don't include this. So I'm going to go focus on those now, and leave behind the nonsense that was just causing me nothing but grief. So that's a way to look at this with Perthrow. What's going to come into your life that's going to make you examine what's going on in your life, and what's keeping you stuck in something that is not healthy, that's not appropriate, that's never going to get you what you want, and what you need and what you deserve. So again, if you are working with runes and you draw Perthrow, that might be one of the things you want to think about. It's not just who controls your fate, but what situation has come into my life to make me think about this stuff. Something that synchronizes all that together and catalyzes this sort of reevaluation or reflection on what is all this? What's the benefit here? Is it just to that person, or am I just supposed to be hurt and upset all the time? Well, no, you're not. And if you can't work it out, then maybe the answer is just to step back and go in another direction. And you can do that. It's fine. It's what you're supposed to do, I think. I don't think we're meant to stay stuck in the upset of life. I don't think we are. I think it's to catalyze something else. And so those moments where it's causing you to think, those are moments of synchronicity, where everything's coming together for you, and you just have to pay attention and understand the bigger message, and awaken to that truth. And I think that that's what Judgment is telling us. So I guess we'll leave it in the cards in the same order as I put them down, and that'll be all right, I think. But I do think that this is just one of these readings where it's suggesting, if something's going on that's uncomfortable for you, it's a moment where you can reevaluate, and it's causing everything to come together. All that you need to know is right there in front of you, and you can examine it in a way that's dispassionate as possible, where emotions are not coming into it. Just objectively look at it in a reasonable way and say, does this make sense to continue on this path, or do I need to shift to another? Taking with me the lessons I learned in this one. And so that would be my recommendation. Ooh, we went a little long here today. I didn't realize that. Well, anyway, thanks for watching, and consider this. If it doesn't resonate today, maybe it'll resonate over the next few days, and just think about it from that perspective, and see what you come up with. But other than that, thanks for watching. If you haven't clicked subscribe yet, I'd love you to do that, and come back again on Monday for another edition of As Above, So Below. Be good to yourself in particular. Be good to one another, and blessed be.